Welcome to Healing Wisdom, a Thursday morning talk show featuring guests sharing their stories and knowledge. We discuss the healing aspects of the arts, metaphysics, social justice, and adventure through all types of terrain. So join me, Pandora Peoples, here on WOMR 92.1 FM in Provincetown and WFMR 91.3 FM in Orleans. We're streaming worldwide at WOMR.org. Good morning, Cape Cod and beyond. This morning we have local dance choreographers Leda and David Iannetelli. This is their 7th year of Movimento Project, and their latest concert is Embody, happening at the Wellfleet Preservation Hall August 24th and 25th at 7:30. Folks can get tickets at wellfleetpreservationhall.org. They'll also be performing at the Cape Cod Theater Company September 8th, 9th, and 10th, and at Thatcher Hall September 15th. Before we get to them, I'm letting you know that we'll also be speaking with astrologer Martha Clarke on what's going on in the stars. So stay tuned for that. Welcome, Leda and David. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pandora.
Let's talk first about your theme and, what your whole inspiration and focus is this year.
Last year, we came with Reset, which was coming back from the pandemic times and all that, and trying to find our balance again and rethinking dance and life. This year, we come with Embody. And Embody is a reflection based on what we've been living, especially after the pandemic, the COVID time, due to many, hours working remotely. We have been in the screen so much. And what are the costs of that for a subjective bodily experience? And so it came out of that, but also came out of, I was inspired by a theory of cognitive embodiment, which is academic and all, but it gives shedded a lot of light into the role that the body occupies in our cognition, in our lives, in our experience, in our sense of identity, in our behavior, in our worldviews, how we understand and respond. So this was very exciting, and so exciting that inspired a new concert. Yeah.
First of all, can you talk about cognitive embodiment theory?
Yeah. Well, it comes out of my first contact with it was through a book called Philosophy of the Flesh of Mark Johnson and George Lakoff, a linguist and a cognitive psychologist. And philosophy, and what they see that the body is central in the development of cognition, in the development of even abstract concepts. So they talk about how the bodily experience gives us a sense of containment. Is one of a central principle that they exemplify, how kids are always putting things in, putting things out, and how our experience as infants being held and being not held anymore, how that is the basis for a lot of abstract concepts. And they actually have another book called Metaphors We Go By that is very interesting, how metaphorically to bodily experiences, our languages and our understanding of ourselves and of how we relate to the world as well. The sense of value, our sense of the things we treasure comes out of initially a very pleasant body experience or not. But those are the basis for our life throughout our as we grow and as we understand and live in the world. Yeah. So that's basically a very general view of it. Yeah.
But I think how it ties into every day is they put it back in the hands of each person, this transforming, altering, building your subjective experience. It really is based on where you put yourself and how you put yourself there. So there's a lot of
1 moment. Yeah.
there's a lot of flexibility that one has, and I think what's exciting about this concert is that excuse me, it's what dancers do. As dancers, we try to alter our bodies, we try to enhance our emotionality, we try to understand the world so that we can present it as dancers, so that we can do our artwork, which is, the attempt to find the poetics of movement, to speak the poetics of movement, to reveal the poetics of movement. And it's the number one onus is on the dancer. You train in class, you prepare, but the actual work is done in one's life on one's own. So I'm very excited about this concert and the effect it may have and the communication it might make, the connection to people, because I think we kind of get to the point where dance starts, and all the dancers in the troupe, they're wonderful artists. They've made lifelong commitments that it's not a professional engagement. It's not a commercial enterprise. It's a passion. It's a vocation. It's a calling. And the works that we're seeing emerge from, Leda's choreographic provocations and people's responses. And we have two wonderful musicians with us that we've had in the past, Larry Chaplin and Frank Baranski. Sorry, Frank. But this time they've composed an original score. So the entire concert, will be work, a few renditions of music that they have, played for others, but mostly it's original material for now. And they've been very excited, and their work has been very exciting and very provocative for us to dance to. So there's something really honest going on here. There's something really basic about an examination of this all, and then, turning it into a discovery, which becomes a celebration, because ultimately you're like, hey, it's happening. It works. This is cool. So it's a human show. It's got a lot of content about everyone who's sitting there watching it, and hopefully we'll go out and bring more of that into their lives, look for more, movement activities and dance and artistic activities,
Yeah. What I think one key thing is that as we live this, the contemporary world, and there's so much in our cell phones, so much in TV or computer, we oftentimes get farther away from our bodily signs, from our bodily needs, and many times we betray that in favor of all the tasks we have to do, the social commitments, the working commitments, professional commitments. And so it's a call to go back to that basic, without filter first experience, which is you yourself as a body, not your body, because you don't have a body. You are a body. So yourself and the world. So that's that immediate experience. How does that resonates in your life? How do you deal with that? And how can you magnify and exercise that subjective perspective? Yeah.
In composition, I think any kind of composition, there's a flow experience, and it really, you use the word presence, or just listening. You become more deeply attuned. It's like a great practice that I've adopted, not with the regularity that I wish, but is to get up an hour before I have to do anything else and just read a bit, write a bit, do a bit of stretching, but basically be open to the day. And I've found that more than anything I've ever done, that session, that moment orients me for the rest of the day, me. It gives me a much deeper take on everything, because there's something that I've learned. I work as a carpenter when I'm not in the summer making these shows, and every experience is mythic or can become mythic. I mean, I have a good plumber friend, and he talks about doing plumber yoga. because you're under a sink and you're reaching for a bolt and you can't get it to turn. You need another wrench and you grab a rag and you're doing all these things and finally it works. Well, I mean, that's as great an undertaking as an army conquering another army or encountering a wizard or a witch or whatever your myths, typically wear for clothing. We're living it day by day, just getting up, getting going, getting something done, and leaving the day with something done that you can be proud of. That's mythic. And so art, I think, and the artistic reflection and this that we're trying to promote in this concert, I think, is about that, getting back to a square one where you're really cool. You're really awesome just because you exist. I mean, trillions of cells and billions of years of evolution. I mean, you're not, like Leda said, it's not your body. You didn't make it. It's this incredible force of nature that is so, and that's where we can be. That's how we can live. Not all the time, maybe, but a lot more than mass media would let us think. It is in our hands, and it's important to find this, and it's wonderful to find this, and it's the truth of our situation.
Can you talk a little bit about the dances and the choreography?
I was gonna say, because you talked about how was the process up with the music, and I want to say that this concert, the music is a new way of working for us with Frank and Larry, because we have collaborated in other moments, but there's having them improvise and interact with our ongoing creative process that has been a challenge and also has been very interesting. But this concert, it is a very difficult topic to approach artistically, embodiment. At first it doesn't seem so, especially in a dance concert, but when you get into it, you see, well, what is embodiment and what is that? How can you use that as a thematic proposal for a whole concert? And I started seeing subtopics that relate to it. And the main one is bodily presence. And we search for that in every dance concert, right? Bodily presence is something that you search for when you're performing, that you aim at. But there are other things too, sense of identity, which is a big topic at this moment, a sense of behavior, how you engage, how you not engage, how you relate to the other and to the environment. Those are all, because it's not just the body as the basis, it's the body in its connection to the other, to the environment, that creates a sense of meaning. You're not alone. Is what is in between. Actually, it's what is between the single instances. That how the connection happens. So that's the singularity about this concert. Yes, that is different from others.
You're performing twice at the Wellfleet Preservation Hall, August 24th and 25th at 7:30, and folks can go to wellfleetpreservationhall.org for tickets, as well as at the Cape Cod Theater Company, and that's September 8th, 9th, and 10th, and then also Thatcher Hall, the 15th of September. So folks have plenty of opportunities to come and see your performances, and it sounds awesome. So thank you so much for being with us, David and Leda, Iannetelli. Thank you.
And everybody's welcome.
Hello out there. I am happy to have our guest here, astrologer, astrocartographer, relocation specialist, and author, Martha Clarke. She is the author of several books, including Venus, Pluto, Letters to Lost Lovers. Venus, Pluto, Letters to Lost Lovers. So welcome. Thank you for joining us and helping us understand the astrological forecast for the coming weeks ahead.
Thank you very much for Pandora. Thank you for having me. I always love being back here. So work away and ask me whatever you want.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So today is the new moon in Leo, and we were corresponding, and you were saying it's really amplifying the Venus retrograde that we've all been feeling. It's started about 3 weeks ago. It goes for about 3 more weeks or 2.5 weeks, and then we also have Pluto in Capricorn. So help us sort this all out. A lot of people are feeling out of sorts. There's a lot of drama. Some of it's external, some of it's more internal. It's a lot to be working out right now. Yeah.
There's a huge amount. So sorry if I'm not looking straight at you, because I'm actually looking at the astrological chart for tomorrow. You know, Venus new moon is in Leo Irish time at 10:38 tomorrow morning. So it's when the new moon is exactly conjunct the sun. And then, of course, we also have Venus retrograde in Leo, and we have Juno in Leo. Juno is the planet of love and relationships. It's kind of like long-term intimate relationships. And interestingly enough, Juno isn't exactly opposed. Juno actually is opposed Pluto. And as I said, Pluto in Capricorn, there's been so much written about Venus retrograde, we've almost forgotten that Pluto is still retrograde in Capricorn. So Pluto went back into Capricorn on the 12th of June this year, where it's kind of doing the final deep clearing out until it moves back into Aquarius on the 22nd of January next year, where it'll stay for 20 years. So the way I like to describe it, it's kind of like we've built the structures of our new lives. We've built our new house. We've furnished it. We've put all the bedrooms in. We know what's where. And then just as we're about to move in, we discover that there's a whole load of rubble in the back garden that absolutely has to be cleared before we can move in. That's the best way I can describe Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. It's a clearing out of the old, clearing out of old, outdated structures, anything that doesn't serve us. And certainly the number of people who I've seen check out of this planet since Pluto went retrograde has been extraordinary. Just on a personal level, not people close to me, but friends and family of people close to me. I've known of about 6 or 7 deaths since the 12th of June. We've lost a lot of kind of famous people as well, including most notably Sinead O'Connor, but there was also people like Tony Bennett, Tina Turner, Glenda Jackson, too many to mention almost. So the Venus retrograde is very much, we're at the peak now because Venus has disappeared from our skies as an evening star to be reborn in a few days later as a morning star. So Venus retrograde is all about reevaluating what you love, who you love, how you love. And again, with Pluto, it's kind of like Pluto and Capricorn is behind Venus going, no, you really have to clear this out. You really have to clear, not just, reevaluate your finances, not just reevaluate, your job or your career, but maybe even reevaluate your friends and your family. A lot of relationships do end during Venus retrogrades. I rear-ended into a BMW of all things the day before I went to Italy. And I was kind of doing the whole Saturn thing as like, well, actually, you weren't properly parked. And if you'd been properly parked, I wouldn't have hit you. And the guards were ringing me and this person was ringing me like, you fled the scene of the crime. And I'm going like, no, I didn't. I went back around and I took a photo in case you guys over-dramatized what I did. But again, it's the old power way. It was very much me standing up to the old power way. It was me standing up to, that's what men do. They take up so much more space and they think that's okay. And I saw the Barbie film last night, and I'm not, doing a detour by having this conversation, but it's a highly subversive film, and it's putting everything, it's rear-ending everything. It's like it's making men realize what it's been like for women to live in a man's world, because we actually still are, even though we don't like to admit it. A lot of the old outdated patriarchal ways of doing things. Like when the guards rang me, it was like, were you the owner of this car that drove off? And like, you left the scene of the crime, and the fella who drove a BMW, he's a lovely fella. And I go like, I don't care if he's a lovely fella. He wasn't properly parked. That's standing up to the patriarchy, standing up to the old way of doing things. I mean, I haven't run since I've come back. I promised I would. But coming back to Pluto and Capricorn, it's like, those wildfire riots in Paris, they are throughout all of France, they spread like wildfire. And they're saying like, we're not having it anymore. Every abuse of power anywhere in the world is just coming up. It's just coming up and being exposed of its own accord. We had a major scandal here in Ireland a couple of weeks ago where Ireland's top broadcaster was accused of not declaring payments. The guy has been as good as exonerated. He's not back in his position just yet. But everybody was saying, oh, this is just another, it'll all be swept under the carpet. There'll be another tribunal. Nothing will happen. And I remember thinking, no, not this time. And what happened was, it's a national broadcasting company. And what happened was, like, a new director general was appointed. He got rid of the old board. Everything was exposed. There was another very famous broadcaster who borrowed a car for 5 years, handed it back the next day. And the guy who was accused of doing all sorts of things has been exonerated. And what was fascinating was the guy in question, his name is Ryan Tubridy. He was going through his Chiron return. His Chiron return started the exact week that this happened. And I remember thinking, okay, he's actually going to be the conduit for change, because it looks like he is going to come back. And he's going like, well, of course I want everything declared. I've nothing to hide. And so he set new standards in an organization that turned out to have a lot of rot, that people didn't quite realize how much rot was there. So that is, we have, as I said, we're at the peak of Venus and Leo, and it'll be very interesting to see how people feel over the next couple of days with the new moon coming into Leo, and with it being a time of setting new intentions for the next 6 months. It's like, what does my heart really, really want? Not what does my mind want, not what do my family want, what does my heart and soul really, really want? And for a lot of people, it's unconditional love. For a lot of people, it's that, just that. It's as simple as that. Or it's as simple as going away somewhere quietly to be creative for a couple of weeks. It's not.
And the paradox of the new moon in this situation, I think, is that to attract something to us, we need to feel that thing. So we need to imagine what we want, but it's in a time where it's like we're just identifying, like you mentioned, we bought the new house, we're looking at the rubble.
As if the rubble is that, I should change the analogy or the image. It's almost like the rubble is actually at our front door. We can't get into the house until we clear the rubble. Right. I think it's the analogy of it's in our back garden, but it's far more accurate to say it's almost like beside our front door. We can't open the front door and move into the house properly.
Yeah, and there might even be some in closets that we have to address, but we can't. It seems like we can't even get in there to even figure out what's in there, so we can remove it and make a plan of action. So I just feel like there's kind of this this paradox of like we know what we need on an emotional level, but not necessarily what that looks like. So how do you envision exactly what it is? I think it's more important to feel what you need, and then kind of be led by that instead of.
Yeah, absolutely. How does it feel internally without knowing how it's going to play out?
Yes.
And once you really, really feel it with every fiber of your being and imagine it and visualize it and take baby steps to make it happen. But it has to be, there's never been more a time where it has to be really in alignment with what your soul and your heart really, 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 really wants. Otherwise, it just won't happen. It just
right. And there's a lot of groundwork that we have to do before January, 22nd, when Pluto goes direct, because
we all need to be literally clearing our houses, which is where we live, because that's where so much of what plays out in our life happens. It's never been a more important time to clear the actual bricks and mortar of the houses that we live in. Get ready, because it's much harder to move anywhere else without having done that. Like, I now live in a house that I can leave at a moment's notice and come back to at a moment's notice. That's why I can travel so much, because there's no fixing or sorting of organizing of anything to be done while I'm gone. All those glitches have to wait till I come back, but they're only minor glitches. So if people do want to travel and maybe engage in higher learning or learn a new language or experience a new culture, it's so much harder to do if there's a lot of stuff in the house that hasn't been dealt with first.
Yeah, and never more than now, I think.
Never more than now. No, because Leo is all about the hearth energy, as in heart, H-E-A-R-T, but also hearth, H-E-A-R-T-H, as is the fire that burns at home. So what's your internal home? Where do you most feel at home? And for a lot of people at the moment, it is creativity, because we're already laden down with ChatGPT and AI and more technology. And that is the world we're moving towards. But we also, there's been a lot of discussion, like the strikes with the Screenwriters Guild is the perfect example. It's like, no, you're not replacing us. And then more and more people start joining them and start joining suit. And when you look at the Mission Impossible film, which I saw a couple of weeks ago, like AI is just a part of that film. AI is part of lots of films and stuff like that now. It's neither good nor bad. It is the world we're moving towards. But the old type of creativity is now more valid than ever.
Right. And I think that
than ever.
Attract the experiences of people validating that within, we first have to really validate that within ourselves, is really to first honor it, because as long as we're questioning anything about our own value, there's always going to be people willing to, be in the divine, sense of like, this life is a play, like they're willing to play out that power struggle with us to show us that maybe we don't have as much value as we think we do. So feeding that inner fire and that inner creativity, like you're talking about, feeding that inner hearth and that inner home with joy and self-love and and our creativity is going to help us in the next.
Hugely. Like in Ireland, there's been an explosion of like writing retreats and writing workshops and writing weekends and painting weekends. And it's fabulous to see. I can't keep up with the amount of them that are here, and I'm doing as many of them as I can, because that's my way of feeding my inner creativity. And sometimes, as I've said before, it doesn't take, thousands of euro or dollars or $500 or $600. Sometimes you can go away for a weekend for like $200 or €200 and just come back and feel refreshed and nurtured for like months afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
And never now, because as I said, like with 4 planets in Leo, if you include Juno, which is an asteroid, like there's such strong Leo energy. It's my favorite time of the year. I know we're also coming into autumn. I know you guys are a bit ahead, a bit behind us, but it's also like coming towards the end of the kids being, on holidays and coming back to school. So, when we get into Virgo season, that's when it gets much more. You have to make the school books ready and pack lunches ready and get the school itinerary and the school scheduled. Whereas the Leo energy, it's like, just play and party and spend time with loved ones for the next couple of weeks and enjoy and literally savor every last bit of the Venus retrograde period, because it's, we have it until the 2nd of September. It's a good, 3 weeks to go,
Yeah, and Juno is the goddess of marriage. So in the chart, it represents marriage, but also partnership and
So, it'll be interesting if among your clients or your friends, like if there's been a lot of breakups and then like getting together with somebody quite new very soon afterwards. Where Juno is at the chart, is who's to say that won't happen? Juno opposed Pluto, or else it might play out as relationships being completely transformed into completely new relationships, deepened and transformed. That's the other way. Not everybody splits up during Venus retrograde. Sometimes relationships are deepened and transformed. And if Juno is opposing Pluto, that's an extra theme playing out.
Yeah. So we have our work cut out for us, collectively processing all of this. So any final words on Pluto before you get into your trip to Italy, which I'm excited to hear about?
No, just that. There's never been more a time, as I said, to like really not just check that everything that needs to be cleared in your house is cleared, but things like legal documents and wills and powers of attorney and like, advanced healthcare, make sure all that's done. You guys in the States are much better at doing that than we are here in Ireland or even in the UK. But just do it, and then it's done, and then somebody else doesn't have to deal with it after you're gone. So that would be extra. And it doesn't take long. It just takes a couple of hours. It's not like, it doesn't have to be something you mull over for months. It can just be something that's done in space of an afternoon.
Italy, how was it?
Well, what was fascinating about Italy was like when I planned it, I didn't plan it around Venus retrograde, not in the slightest. And yet, it was extraordinary. Somebody said to me that Italy for me is like being enveloped in a warm hug. Like I came back on Saturday and I'd all my clothes washed on Sunday. And by 12 o'clock on Sunday, all I wanted to do was go right back to the airport. But, I had an incredible sailing experience. It was very dramatic. It was very challenging, but it was also beyond everything I ever expected. But what was really fascinating about the second week was I was back in Lucca for the first time in 7 years. And I was very nervous. Was it going to be as good as I remembered? Was it going to be not as good? Was it going to be better? And the B&B I was staying in the room was a bit weird. So I moved to a hotel for the last 3 nights. And literally 2 days before I left, I figured out actually less than 200 yards away is where I became an astrologer 8 years ago, 2 days to the day, when Venus was retrograde in Leo.
Thank you so much, Martha Clarke, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for having me, Pandora. It's a pleasure as usual.
You've been listening to Healing Wisdom at Outermost Radio. All of our shows are podcasts at WOMR.org. Also check out healingwisdomradioshow.com and contact me at pandora@WOMR.org.
Yeah. Cool.